Hey everyone, today we're going to be learning about fractions, and there's three questions I want you to be thinking about and be able to answer at the end of today's lesson. The three questions I want you to answer are: what is a fraction? What are its parts? What are the names of its parts? And what are some examples of fractions? And so I've drawn a picture of here today, and I'll try to get where you can see. There's actually two pictures, and I want you to see that these pictures, both of these pictures, are supposed to be the same size. But one picture, of course, is blue. It's divided into smaller parts. And then there's a larger square, or the same square, same size square, which has no parts. But they both are the same. And so I wanted to look at the definition of what is a fraction. And the definition I've written here in black, the definition of a fraction is that it is a part of a whole. Which, when we look at a whole, we're looking at this as the number one. This is one whole. And when we're looking at a fraction is actually going to be, if we're looking at just one part, like one of these squares here, that's actually, if I'm just looking at one square, that's less than 1. Might be a little hard to learn at first, but we'll get there eventually. But today, mainly, we're just getting the basics of what is a fraction, what are the names of its parts, and what are some examples. So I want you to look at this picture right here in blue. And I want you to think about what are the different things that you can tell me about it. So right now, just think about it. You can pause the video if you want to say what are some things that you can tell me that's true about this shape right here. And some of the things you may have come up with this picture, what can you tell me about it? Well, it has how many rows? 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. It has 1, 2, 3, 4 in each row. So it can be a multiplication problem. You may have said it's an array. If you said it's an array, give yourself a pat on the back that you did a good job knowing that's an array. And so we have 4 rows, we have 4 columns. We could actually look that this represents the multiplication problem, 4 times 4. But we're not going to be looking at 4 times 4 as this shape as an array today. We're actually looking at ways that we can divide it, that we can separate it. And what we're looking at, and when we're looking at parts of a whole, we want to look at it as not just any part, but that is equal parts. We've looked at multiplication and how multiplication, like if we had 4 groups, 1, 2, 3, 4, and we had 4 in each, that we have equal groups. We have 4 groups, and then we have 4 in each group. So that each circle here has the same number of dots inside of it. When we're looking at fractions, fractions also have equal parts. And what we're looking at, I want you to look at this square again. I want you to think, what are some ways that we can separate it? If we could draw, using a different color, if we could draw a line, how can we divide it into 2 equal parts? I want you to look at this very carefully. I want you to think about it. What are ways that we can draw it into 2 equal parts? Are you ready? Can I draw a line right down here? Does that give me 2 equal parts, one on this side and one on this side? Is that 2 equal parts? Do I have the same number over here as I do over here? I do, right? Can I do it another way? Could I do, let's say, could I do this way? Do I have 2 equal parts up here? I do. Okay, let's do a challenging way. You ready for this one? Okay, let's look at this way. What if I did it this way? Is that equal parts? Is it? How do you know? Well, let's look at it. Is this the same size as this? Is it the same amount? And it is. So both of these are equal. And so we have 2 equal parts. And so when we're looking at a fraction, let's look at our next part, is what are its parts? When we're looking at a fraction has a line like this. And then there's a number or a digit on top, and then there's a digit on bottom. In this case, I'm going to put the number 1 up here, and I'm going to put the number 2 down here. Okay, so this number up here, this digit up here has a name, and it's called a numerator. And this number down here, this digit down here, is called a denominator. So it's important to know, denominator. It's important to know what these parts mean. So if we're looking at this part, a denominator means how many parts did I divide it into. So you see this right here? I divided it. I'm going to erase this one. We'll go back and get our shape again so we can see it all. So we can see a little bit better. Okay. So we have our shape, and so I divided, let's go back to the first way I did it. I divided it into two parts, and let's say I shaded one part in. So I have two equal parts, one shaded, one not shaded. So my number 2, my denominator on the bottom, tells me how many parts I have that make up this whole unit. Remember, this is our whole unit, same size as this one. This is our whole unit. I have 1, 2 parts. This top number tells me how many I'm counting, or in this case, how many did I shade in. I shaded in 1 part. So this fraction right here is, the way you would say this, you would say it 1/2. 1/2. You would say this fraction 1/2 because I have 1 part shaded in out of a total of 2. And so these numbers this number explains its parts. And so what are some examples? This is an example of a fraction. This picture and this number is an example of 1/2. You can both draw it, this is the drawing of it, and this is a number written as a fraction. So this is the basics that we're going to be learning. If you need to watch it again, if you need to rewind it, go back over it. You need to be able to answer these questions once you come to class.